everyone! In this video we're going to be building an apartment building with a couple businesses on the ground floor. So what I wanted to do here was to first have a box that I could have divided into so that it would be easy for the apartments as well and for the two businesses that I wanted to have. One is a cafe and the other one is sort of like a fashion store, and I actually made sure that this would work perfectly as the bubble tea and thrift stores, but I did separate them so it makes sense as a cafe and also as just a fashion store. So I am building in this lot where I had already built this music store, so I'm going to be building this as a full street of different businesses and also residential areas. And my plan really is to have this as apartments, but if you would like to use it as either retail or the bubble tea and thrift store, you could do that. I did make sure to have every single item that was required, but now I have already worked on how it's going to look on the front, and I also added this side door that's going to lead into this hallway for the apartments. There's just going to be a staircase, and at first I added some laundry underneath that, but then I decided to have that on the floor on top of this one, and instead just use that area for some bicycle storage. I also have this other room next to it that becomes a gym, and it's not a big gym at all, but I thought that it was a cool thing to have in an apartment building. It doesn't have a lot of windows. I did add a few of them later, but I also made sure to add some air conditioning in there as well as a stereo so that there's so it's a kind of a nice area to work out. It isn't fancy at all, but it is still like a really nice thing to have. And if you wanted your Sims to be able to do other things, there's also those other businesses and spaces. I'm going to eventually add a terrace on top of this building, and each apartment has a balcony, so I think that's pretty nice. But this gym is really just very simple. There's a couple towels, and underneath this table I just added that stereo that I had mentioned and just a calendar. That felt like something that would make sense in that space. I did actually add a notice board, the one that apartment hallways have in city living. I don't think that's functional in here, but I thought that it looked nice and I didn't want to use the other notice boards that we had in the base game. So now we have this area more defined. I have added staircases to all of these levels, and I also made sure to separate the ones at the top so that I could have better lighting. Unfortunately, that doesn't translate to the other areas because of how I have the stairs open on the rooftop, but it just felt important to add them like that in that space because it was so close to that rooftop. And I don't show it, but I did add a water heater on the wall that is opposite the wall with the trash chute. I also wanted to have these very beautiful doors and windows from for rent, but I don't think I'm going to keep them because I actually had a plan with this apartment building, which is that I once built this other series of stores. It was supposed to be like a couple of shops next to the sea in San Myshuno, and I thought they were really cute. And one of those stores sold furniture, so I made a series of living room sets. And when I made them, I really liked them and how different they were to what I normally build and how I normally furnish a living room. And so I wanted to make this apartment building in which each apartment was going to be completely inspired by one of those living rooms. So there's actually 5 living rooms, and they are in here right now. They are in the basement. And one of those living rooms I did end up using on that fashion store because I was only going to have 4 apartments. But you will see that in a bit. Now we're just starting to furnish this area, and I'm adding everything that is required just to make sure that this would be functional so that then I can just close up that panel. And I decided to have the microphone on that music store instead of in any of these 2 spaces because I thought that it didn't make sense and I didn't have a good spot for that to go. I think that microphone is just for like some stand-up comedy events and some poetry reading as well, and it just felt so weird to me that it would be an activity that you would have in any of these businesses. So I just added the microphone in there, and it might not be functional the way that I have it against some other items. But I don't really care. I didn't think that was something that mattered to me in this lot. And I am now adding these very beautiful tiles. I was really inspired by Mexico City in this build. I had recently visited it, and I just wanted to include many of the things that I really love about that city. So the music store is really inspired by one that I visited in there. I'm going to have that video linked down in the description, by the way. And this cafe is also inspired by a coffee shop chain that some Mexican cities have. Mine doesn't have it, and that makes me very sad because for a chain, it is my favorite. I do really love some local coffee shops that I have in my city, or that I used to have. I was also really inspired by a coffee shop that was in my city, and that one had a lot of very beautiful, like, traditional Mexican crafts and antiques on display, so I wanted to include some of that in here. And that's part of the reason why I also have this style and this thing from Jungle Adventure that looks very traditional. It's a difficult thing to use in most spaces just because it's very stylized, and many of these spaces that I make don't really have this look. But in here I wanted to have a mixture of some modern things and some more traditional ones. So for example, I have a bunch of these canisters and that picture. So because that just made me think of spaces that I have seen in here that are more traditionally inspired. And that's actually why I also wanted to have these, I don't really know what to call them, but this window from Jungle Adventure as well here in the bathroom, because that cafe that was in my city used to have this very beautiful entrance to the bathroom, and it would have the sinks outside of the sinks would be separate from the toilet. So I am using that, and I was also thinking about using a different tile in there. And this is when I started to really use a lot of the stuff from Movie Hangout, because I thought that this colorful patterned boho sort of furniture would be perfect for this space. I thought that it really fit the vibe that I was going for, especially with this beautiful tiled floor. That's something that was really inspired by that chain that I have mentioned. And I just really loved using a lot of this mismatched furniture. Even the tables look like they have some tile on them, and it made me very happy to do that. I think this is the first time that I'm using these, like, living room chairs from Movie Hangout, and also the first time that I am using the colorful swatches from the stuff from Movie Hangout, as well as that side table from the Blooming Rooms kit that is also, like, really specific. And I actually used a lot of loud items in this space, but I think that they work together because some of them are from the same packs and a lot of them aren't. I used some stuff from, like, the Pastel Pop kit and even Get Together. One of the tables that I added is from there. But the colors are very similar, so I think that I stuck to a color palette, and that's what made it work. I also wanted to include a lot of these beautiful painted skulls and also the cut gemstone skulls, because that just makes me think of Mexico. One of my favorite things about Mexico is the Day of the Dead, and whenever I can add skulls to a build or really to anything, I'm going to do it. And by the way, I took these from the gallery. You can normally find them just by searching for things like Jungle Adventure rooms, and you might find some with the artifacts, which is where I got these stuff from, and the cut gemstones are also from the gallery. And I didn't add as many little knickknacks as I wanted, but I was very happy that I was able to add a mortar and pestle, because that coffee shop that I used to really love had one of those, and it isn't the exact same kind of mortar and pestle, but I thought that it was close enough, and it looks like stone. So I was pretty happy with that, and now I am just adding a few more plants and stuff. I did make sure to look through the stuff from Movie Hangout, because I was realizing that it fit really well with all of this stuff. Although I didn't use the table from that pack, I decided to use one from two from City Living, one from Get Together, and one from the base game. And I think that it worked really well, even with all of these really bright colors, because I really wanted tiled tabletops, and that made me very happy. But now we are going to be moving into this second business. This is the clothing store, and I decided to start by working on these changing rooms. I actually end up only having 2 of them instead of 3 because of how I wanted to lay this out with the living room that I had already designed. But I really liked adding these clothes racks as well as the linen mirrors and these city living chairs. Those chairs are really nice. I really like them. I almost never use them because I find them a bit hard to include in a room as a whole, but since they were the only real furniture piece in these rooms, I was really happy to have them here, and I felt that they matched the rock from Jungle Adventure really well. And back to the coffee shop for a bit, I wanted to make sure that it was a pet-friendly space because I have a dog, and ever since we have that dog, I much prefer going to a place that is pet-friendly and that I can take her. So I thought that it was a cool thing to just add a couple of pet bowls in there. Nothing fancy. I also had a pet bed, but that's really it for pets in that space. But I really like that. And now I have rearranged those changing rooms, and I decided to have one of the clothes racks from high school years in that hallway. And I also added that it's like a tiny chalkboard on the wall because I wanted to make it look like those, I don't know what to call them, but sometimes when you go into a changing room, they will give you a thing with a number just so that they can keep track of how many things you went into the changing room with. And now I have made this display. I am using that clothes rack from Moschino, actually. I used all of the clothes racks that I have, as you can see, and it was a bit hard for me to lay out this space in a way that it made sense, and I am not entirely happy with how the display looks, because these windows are very beautiful, and I really love using them, but they aren't the best for visibility inside of a space. They are perfect for a coffee shop, but for a display window, not so much. But I didn't want to mess up with the way that this building looked in the front, because I was thinking that it was all built at once and nobody had remodeled those windows, so I decided to keep that. And when I was building this, I realized that I was using a strange combination of things. Some of this furniture is more modern and more basic, I would say, and some of it is more trendy, but I also have that side table on this sitting area that is a lot more traditional. So I just decided to embrace the fact that this was a very eclectic space, and that's what I decided to go with, because I am using all sorts of styles, even on the wall art and the shelves and everything. And I think that it came out okay. I really liked making that gallery wall with the pictures from the Modern Lux kit, as well as a mirror and a light. They all have like gold frames and things. So I thought that it worked well. And then I was thinking about adding rugs, and that actually took me a long time to pick. I cut all of that out because it was ridiculous. But I ended up going with these more boho style ones. Oh, that's when I added the chalkboards. I forgot that I had added those much later in the process. But now I think that I am just going to be adding some finishing touches, things such as plants and some accessories for the store to sell. I added some jewelry and also some nail polish because that felt like something that you would find in one of these shops besides just clothing. And I also decided to paint some of the walls black because it gave it enough contrast, I thought. And that made the space feel a lot more finished. But that's mostly it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. Check out the first part of this series. I'm going to be finishing this hopefully this month. And then I'm going to be uploading it to the gallery. My ID is brand new if you want to check out my stuff. Thank you again so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon.